Welcome. It is my pleasure to be here on the occasion of Evian Gordon's 70th birthday. And if that wasn't a milestone in its own right, I have to say that on a personal level, this has been a journey with Evian that has been one of the most important parts of my life and has helped me both personally and has significantly my practice as a psychiatrist and the patients who benefit from the wisdom he has shared. So, knowing that he was both 70, knowing that he was collating some of the most important kernels of his wisdom and making that available to a community of like minded believers to share in and benefit from the journey, like I have, I was thrilled at a chance to interview him about his book. We first met a long time ago at the first conference on personalized medicine at MIT. We now live in an era where everything from genomics, biomics, the individual influence of individual physiology helps us understand that patterns of behavior and standardization of treatment is important, but understanding how solutions have to be personalized to individuals is also critical. And I think when I look back, what changed when Evian came into my life was I had had very good psychiatric training, and I have no complaints about the great standards that I was put through, both as at Dartmouth Medical School and then again at MGH, which was a great place to learn psychiatry. But I had never had an understanding of the brain in the way that I was to come to understand it through meeting and knowing Evian. And I know personally, both from the reflections of my patients and in my practice, it was that additional insight and openness to understanding much more about how the brain functions and how the brain can be tamed and how you can actually befriend your brain and engage in brain health as much as you can gain physical health. So from the mysterious world of the analytic couch to the democratized present day approach to understanding and befriending your brain, I believe that there is a secret that can benefit us all. So without further ado, Evian, why now? You've written books, you've lectured all over the world, you've engaged with some of the greatest minds in neuroscience. Why now? Do you want to put it all down? And who is your audience? Who's the audience and what do you want to tell them?
Well, firstly, David, thank you so much for that. I remember that day at MIT, the hall was packed, and you were the first speaker, and I did not know at that point that you had studied acting and Shakespearean acting to boot, and you memorized them. It was fascinating. I went, oh my goodness. And then we had coffee afterwards, and you said, if you can deliver what you just presented at this conference, an integrative approach, if you can deliver that on a PC, I could help you get it out on scale. And at that stage, you were, the head of innovation of the largest insurance company on the planet. And then you did. And I went, oh my God, normally when people say that to you, you go like, sure you will, but you did. And that's been the hallmark about you, David. You've not only shared in the deepest ideas about the brain, but you've become and have always been probably a phenomenal foot soldier in the brain revolution. And so it's just a wonderful moment to share this day with you. And thank you for interviewing me about my book. The essence of it, David, is why now is because, as you said, because I set up the world's first standardized and integrative database on the brain, I think it gave me access to people like you and so many others, the Walter Freeman, the Steve Kozlows, and people who really were founders in the field of neuroscience and who were magnanimous, as you were to me in your clinical wisdoms that were just so profound. And I feel like there was a time where I needed to try and pay that forward as much as possible. And this very simple book, which is designed to be read in like 3 hours, is, I suppose, a tribute to all of those people and all of our efforts of the hundreds of people you and I have worked with, David, whereby the brain, as a highly interconnected system, is hard to make sense of without a holistic approach. And we live in a world of silos, a sea of silos. And everybody believes, as you know, David, I coined the term neural epicentrism. Everybody somehow, it's a non-conscious bias that what they are doing, if it's genetics, if it's behavioral therapy, if it's neuroimages, that somehow is the epicenter, and it makes no sense. And so to me, the integration is difficult initially, but it is simple in the end, because the closer we get to mechanism, the more likely we are to make a real difference. So the essence of it, David, was that context of knowing, doing, and integrative wisdom. And I'm not going to give a long spiel about the book, but maybe just 3 takeaways. And the takeaway of knowing was that until you align your non-conscious emotion and your conscious rational thinking, you are walking around in the dark. And you and I have been discussing that conundrum and that gap. The biggest gap is between knowing and doing. And I'll come back to that and engage you in maybe a minute or two at the end to just discuss how we both together are forging this forward. And this book is hopefully just a simple distillation of it. You and I both know that stress is the gateway to most mental illness, toxic stress, not the good stress. And that emotions, this non-conscious fifth of a second, where the brain decides what is threatening or rewarding, that fifth of a second shapes our thinking, shapes who we are, who we become, how we self-regulate. And that is the missing fifth of a second that most people go, oh, well, it's non-conscious, too complicated. Not at all. It's surprisingly straightforward in a sense that it is driven by cues in the environment, by people's body language, by voice tonality. And so we can determine very quickly, a snapshot judgment to the brain. And then at about half a second, when the brain has been advised as to whether something is threatening or rewarding, we feel it in our heart rate, sweat rate, different cues. So we feel it. And the way, as you know, David, I describe it as emotions are like primary colors and feelings are like the rainbow of the primary colors. And really that the point of the book was not only the knowing, but disentangling in the doing, providing a framework, David, a habit framework. But not just, the habit frameworks that are out there, behavioral ones are wonderful. Whether it's James Clear and Atomic Habits or BJ Fogg, wonderful researchers, wonderful people. But I wanted to just do, as you said, in psychiatry, to add the neuroscience, same for habits, add the neuroscience in real time, in those seconds, as to how we can best deal with these small steps, with knowing, routine, and transfer from a mechanism point of view, but in a simple way, and turn it into a routine, and find a way to get across this challenging gap of knowing to doing. To end off, David, I wanted to add this one other slide, because it's kind of everything that you and I have done, is that we deploy these insights. And of course, you as a psychiatrist you've operated at the highest level in the world, really, in big companies, small companies, systems, schemes. seeing a lot of patients, and we have been sharing for many years this normal distribution of people who have a mental challenge where we all live on this continuum. It is a continuum. There is no them and us particularly in mental health, and we all live on this continuum, and we fluctuate where we have these brain challenges. We can have periods of well-being and even peak performance where we have our stress controlled. But David, those are the elements that I see us moving forward together in further podcasts and in, obviously we collaborate at other levels as well in terms of deploying this on scale. But that's the essence. That's essentially what I've got, David.
To everybody who reads or sees this, to go further behind some of those insights, to take even the first one between the emotional and the rational, it is so funny how we are so easily misled that we give this primacy to what we think is rational, but nobody really knows what rational thought is. And many a Nobel Prize has gone to an economist who has explained to us multiple times that we are less governed by what we think is our rational brain than by our emotional brain. So that understanding is critical to so many areas of success in human life. And if there's anything that in the pain and the struggle of trying to successfully navigate life, it is knowing yourself. And you can't know yourself if you don't start with where you began, emotional versus rational. If you don't begin to dip your hand into that unconscious world and make friends with it and say, teach me your secrets. Show me how we can work together. And so to have a book that discusses these things and takes us through that journey and in simple language makes it available, that I try to do with somewhat difficulty every day with different patients. And they teach me and they tell me what parts of how to express things better and what metaphors touch them, and what language they find difficult. But to have it put together. And I think that what you've said is most important, because I think the podcasts that you're talking about with this book are a crucial element.
Well, thank you so much, David, for today and for your sharings as always. And I'm very excited about our next steps in applying this further to these huge kind of clinical opportunities that have now become the new world of health tech, collaborative care. And the integration is no longer too hard to do. It's too obvious not to do. And in fact, the days of silos dominating are coming to an end. The brain revolution is beginning to take hold, and it is integrative by nature.
Absolutely. So thank you for your 70 years.
Thank you for your wonderful friendship and your support for so long. Ever since that wonderful presentation I think it was in Kendall Hall, that beautiful building.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, what a day that was. I'll never forget it, David. It was wonderful and has been wonderful ever since. Thank you.
And thanking you. So go celebrate.
Thank you.
And the rest of us will, that we had a chance to share it with you.
Thank you.